This is Ali Vogel from Flexxible by Design, and today I have the pleasure to be interviewing Elliot Dahl. Elliot Dahl is the head of product design at Hightouch. If you are interested in learning about what makes a great designer and what makes you hireable, how to move into management, and how to think about your career, this episode is for you. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today, Elliot.
Hey, good to see you, Ali. Thank you for having me.
Little secret, Elliot and I have known each other for a really long time. I actually think you're the guest that I've known the longest that's ever been on the pod. So, Elliot, how long have we known each other?
Let's see. I don't know if I really want to date it like that, but it's probably close to 20 years now.
20 years, 20 years.
Wow.
And back when I met Elliot, Elliot was like sketching and doodling on skateboards and like doing merch and all kinds of really fun and crazy creative projects. In fact, Elliot is one of the reasons I actually became really interested in the digital design space. Elliot was making websites since he was a teenager. I don't want to divulge any information that might date us back too much, though we're not that old. But Elliot, why don't you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into the space?
For me, like many designers, started out just being creative. Was drawing a lot of stuff in high school, got my hands on some bootleg copies of Photoshop, started making t-shirts. I was in a band for a very short period. I didn't really make any music, but the t-shirts looked really good for it. So that was when I kind of realized like maybe I shouldn't be pursuing music. Maybe there's something else here. A lot of my early career was me just freelancing, figuring out as I went. Someone paid me $200 to make a website. Got to figure out how to make that website real quick. So just trial by fire for a lot of it. And then my first big product design job was actually because of a meetup that you dragged me to in San Francisco. You messaged me, we should go to this thing. I don't know, I'm kind of tired after work. I ended up going, and that's where I joined Pivotal. I joined there to try to learn more about working with a larger team instead of just being a solo designer. I learned a lot about people and process there. Really cut my teeth as a product designer. From there, I got introduced to Jared Arandu, who was running the design team at Lattice, and I made the move over there to learn more about people management, as well as getting to scale a design team from the beginning. In the early years, it was just Jared and I, and getting to build that design team out to 40 plus folks by the time that I left. So it was kind of wild,
Wow.
that growth. And then I kind of stumbled into the crew over at Hightouch, got connected to their founders, and saw the opportunity to build a design practice from the ground up, taking everything that I learned about management from Lattice and scaling a team and getting to apply it for the first time on my own at Hightouch. So that's where I am at today, playing head of product design.
So let's go backwards a little bit because I think you're being too modest. How did you go from being a web designer and actually being in the weeds of making websites to become a product designer? And what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That was a really tough time to break into product design. I think it's still hard to break into product design. I was doing a lot of freelance, and I started working for a company called Automotive Workwear. They were selling automotive workwear online. It was an e-commerce company. And so I was the only designer there. So I was doing top to bottom design. I was designing booths for trade shows, marketing emails, and working on the website. And what I realized was that I was really enjoying working on the website, and I would be totally fine if I never had to make another marketing email. And so trying to figure out how could I do more of that? And then that was kind of stumbling into, oh, there's this world of product design, which aligns with my interest in business and in the creativity of design, and trying to connect those two things together. So then trying to make the pitch to any company that would take me on to be a product designer full time.
One of the things that has always impressed me about you is even though you didn't get a degree in graphic or visual design or communication design, you've always had a really high level of craft. And this is something that we stress a lot at Flexi, which is a lot of people call themselves product designers, but if you don't have the foundations, even if they're self-taught foundations, it's really hard to put you on the level of project that we do, because for us, excellence is key and craft is really what we look for. So how did you go from not having a background in visual design, communication design, product design as some people actually study today, to having that high level of craft that did allow you to get that level of role?
Now, I did have a little bit of an advantage in high school. I had some web design courses and design courses, but at a very basic level. But I learned the basics of graphic design, right? Craft comes down to putting in the reps. And you can see that in almost any discipline. I always think about this. I have a buddy of mine who's a professional photographer, Michael Shaneblum. I remember him telling me how he went to a really fancy photography school and he just couldn't believe that the other kids at the school would only want to go out and shoot photos when they had a project to shoot photos, right? And he's one of those creatives that just has to be creating constantly. He's always going out and taking photos. It's the only thing that he loves. And I always think about him when it comes to design and like, I want to push my craft higher. Okay, well, if I want to push my craft higher, I got to be crafting. I got to be designing. It's about putting in those reps, exploring other people's work, taking it apart, building it myself, finding things to design for that are important to me always helps to fuel that growth to that next level. That's a lot of what I work with the product designers on my team about is, how do we find the areas to keep focusing and honing in on that craft? It's not something that you just get from taking a class. You definitely don't get it from just getting a fancy degree. It comes from the reps.
And so today you're managing a team. How do you continue to evolve and hone your craft, even though you're in a management position?
So that is a challenge. I think in the modern design world, managers are being asked to still have craft skills. It's no longer enough to just have the people skills. You have to maintain those craft skills. I don't know if I have the perfect answer there other than continuing to jump in on projects, to give feedback, to get my hands dirty. I think that's one of the things that I'm able to make as a pitch to designers who join the team, that I'm not going to ask you to do unrealistic things. I'm right there with you. I know the design system. I know how everything clicks together. I've got a lot of product context. We're going to work through these things together. I'm right there with you, rather than being the design leader that's just telling you what to do and I don't know, just figure it out. Something that's really important to me. So trying to continue to work on those skills is part of that.
So when you're looking to hire for your team, what are some of key the key elements that you're really searching for the perfect fit?
One of the things that I love to see when I'm looking at profiles is that love for the craft, right? That love for design. And that doesn't even have to be in their actual portfolio pieces. It can be in the way they present those portfolio pieces. It's the way that they design their website. It's the way they design the slide deck to put it all into. That gives us a massive springboard to build upon, even if they are more on the junior side. I can see that they are going to grow so much faster. And so that's something that's really important to me. I think through our interview process, the other thing I'm really looking for is that coachability. Can they take feedback and incorporate it? Do they want that feedback? That's something that's really important to me as well. Designers who struggle with taking feedback do not grow as quickly. And what we do is an emotional process of putting our creativity on the table, right? And having people break it apart. And so much that there's a mental fortitude to build up there, right? Not getting calloused, but being able to separate yourself from that work.
So what are the things that you're looking for specifically in the portfolio?
As a design manager looking at your portfolio, I'm not going to spend 30 minutes reading every single case study. I skim through every case study within 20 seconds. And what I need to see are you collaborating with other folks. Maybe there's a couple of diagrams. I don't want to see too many diagrams, just enough diagrams to tell me that you're working with some kind of a difficult problem, and then show me the work, right? Show me the big, beautiful outcome. Ideally, start with the big, beautiful outcome and then break down how you got there and some of the intricate details. I want to see the design work. And when a designer at the very end, like their final thing is, a composite of 3 different screens, one little tiny image, I know that you don't value your design work very much because you can't even present it to me.
That's something that I always look for also in the portfolio is I want to see big visuals. And when I say big, I mean, I want to be able to see the UI in a high fidelity format so I can actually be able to understand what kind of platform were you working with? Are the principles of strong visual design presented in these screens? And then process is
Yeah.
important. And I look at so many portfolios. So I'm like looking through these portfolios and same thing. when I see process and user flows and research and a lot of text, I just don't even want to look through it. And I know I made that mistake earlier on in my career. It does depend team by team. So tell us a little bit more about Hightouch. Tell us about the product and tell us how this weaves into your philosophy on how you are determining whether a designer would be a good fit for your team.
Hightouch as a company has had three major phases to it. We're in this third phase right now. The first phase was really us seeing ourselves as a data infrastructure company. We were helping data engineers to build the pipelines, to take data out of your cloud warehouse, like your Snowflake, and then pipe it over to many different SaaS tools, many different destinations, right? And you can serve many different business units with this, right? Customer data pushed over to Salesforce so the sales team is empowered. You can start to imagine use cases for the finance team, the product team, the marketing team. We started to recognize that marketing teams were underserved by their data teams. And this is where our phase two starts. We're just really shifting ourselves to be a marketing technology company. And it was in serving this non-technical customer with audience builders and kind of no code views to grapple with their data and understand it better so they can make better campaigns, save more money, make more money, all the good stuff. The third phase is now, what does marketing look like in the age of AI? And so we've been building some really cool tools, some of them partially released, a lot more still in the works, but being able to allow AI to run portions of your marketing stack. And so you no longer have to be thinking about, well, let me do an A/B test on this one thing. Run 1,000 experiments at the same time. Let the AI sort it out. And you start seeing these really interesting patterns in your data. And so there are these like micro optimizations that the AI can make. But the coolest thing to me is the data that you get out the other side to recognize where your marketing efforts are connecting and where there's just like holes. There's an entire demographic of people that you're just not connecting with. Great, let's go apply some human creativity and go target those people in new ways.
So, who are the buyers of this?
So it's a pretty wide range of businesses, B2B, B2C, all sorts of physical retail to SaaS businesses. We're working with a number of Fortune 500 companies now, really helping them to speed up their marketing processes.
You have this technical product, you have this platform. What are you looking for in terms of the portfolio, the actual visual elements? And the reason I ask is because we've had clients before that have said, I only want to look at designers that have worked on complex systems, or I only want to look at designers who have X, Y, and Z. And that can be really hard as a designer to be able to fit yourself into a mold if you've done, a ton of mobile projects in the past, or if you've only done heavy data platforms, but you want to switch into, a different type of industry. So is that something that is true for you as well? Are you looking for domain specific design work, or are you really looking for someone who's strong in the craft? How do you think about your hiring?
Yeah, so it's shifted over time. I think initially it was really looking for very technical designers that have some sort of a technical background. That's definitely been important, and it comes out through our interview process. We have a technical exercise that we put designers through to ensure that they can grapple with the concepts of data and data moving around. As we've grown, it has become less important on some of the products where we are building these kind of like no code experiences for the non-technical user. We're able to kind of open that up a little bit. We're able to focus on folks who have more of the just surface level, like they know how to make good crafted experiences to simplify things for users. That simplicity is still really important and very central for us.
I see a lot of designers on my team that ask the question all the time, well, how do I get this experience? And I always try to give varied projects. So if I see someone wants to move more into complex systems and they don't really have that in their portfolio, and that's kind of preventing them to work with that kind of client. But for example, imagine you're hiring, you're interviewing, and you get a portfolio of someone who has only mobile design. But you see this and you're like, wow, this is such a strong designer. They have amazing visual skills, amazing interaction skills. They really understand the problem space. Would you consider them?
Possibly. Depends on how good those designs are still. There's a piece of this that I'm trying to de-risk, right? It's easier to go with the candidate who has relevant experience because I know that they'll be able to do it again, rather than the candidate that has, that orthogonal experience. It's nice, but it's not directly related to what we're doing. And so that does play into the mix, as this is a numbers game and I'm trying to de-risk the decision as much as possible. I think that designers who have less of that technical work that want to move into more technical things, being a technical designer, you find success in the questions that you're able to ask. And not just I come up with one good question, but I'm able to question that same question 20 more times and keep going deeper and cementing my own knowledge, my own understanding of the problem, and figuring out different ways to ask questions from different angles to ensure that I am aligned.
So when a designer is prepping for an interview with your team, you would expect them to come in assuming they are successful in your process and they're making it to the final stages to actually learn the vocabulary of your business and be asking you questions in a way that frames their understanding and knowledge to at least have some degree of understanding of the product and the business that you guys have at Hightouch.
And I think before that used to be a pretty big ask, right? Go figure out this big, complicated platform, what the heck we're doing, and some of the vocab. But now you can just ask an AI to do that for you and give you the cliff notes, right? Of just help me understand this business, what's important, what questions should I be asking? If I were to join this business, what kind of growth potential is there? How should I be framing my questions around this? There's just kind of no excuse now. And so I do expect folks to understand the basics and be able to discuss it. They don't have to know all the ins and outs and all the big plans we have. They don't have to, be able to predict where everything is going, but they should be able to pick up enough context from a quick conversation with an LLM to be able to ask me better questions than just, what's your PTO policy? We got to be able to go deeper. I need to be able to see them engage a little bit more.
Tell me about an interview that you've had that has blown you away.
This was someone that we made an offer to, who's now part of the team. It was the first designer who was able to show me a realistic example of how they've been using AI in their design workflow. And we were able to have a really interesting conversation in that portfolio review about when is this actually useful? When is it not useful? Because it's still a very narrow use case. What he had basically done was he needed to build this new kind of product category really for his business. And so he wrote out a spec using an LLM, going back and forth. Let's write out this spec together. He dumps that into like a Lovable. It creates, this little feature as an app. He takes that thing, throws it into Figma, plays around with it, rearranges some pieces, throws that Figma back into Lovable, creates a whole new thing. And so he's just using it to bounce ideas off of. Help me think of some new patterns here. What are some other ways to rearrange this page? And it's helpful for certain types of work. It's not helpful for every single project and every single design challenge you come across. But it was really interesting to see how he was able to build like this entire feature category for the business in a single week through rapid iteration using this AI as his thought partner.
You've actually seen this application of AI tools within the iteration process be something that is interesting to you on a managerial level. Is that then something that you are able to implement into your process at Hightouch?
Well, I'm pushing all the designers to get the code base running on their computers so that we can all start using Cursor more often. And even with Cursor, it's cute for making some prototype kind of things, and there's still more to iron out there. I think these tools are fun for playing around, for iterating, for prototyping, and I think we're going to see a lot more momentum on that side of things. There are small ships and wins that you can do with a Cursor that can just kind of help you navigate some things, but it's still not quite make this entire feature, and it's all good to ship to production and no worries, just push it.
The market is changing. AI speeding up and evolving the way that not just designers, but developers, PMs, founders, everyone's role is changing. And if you don't have that mental flexibility and the flexibility to actually understand that your role could look different one day to the next, depending on where the business is going or how your team is evolving, then you're going to have a really hard time in the industry, and you might just find yourself out or go to a company that maybe aligns better with that fixed mindset, which is definitely not where the tech industry is. It's going that way on a global scale. I'm curious, from your perspective, have you seen any friction points either internally at Hightouch or at other companies that you might be advising? I know you run a group of product design leaders within the tech space, that people are having a hard time with these shifts, or would you say that people have understood that this is the direction of the market and they've gotten on the bandwagon?
I think the folks that are finding success or that are really chasing that success recognize that the playing field is shifting quickly. and are exploring. That's what's been really fun is talking with other design leaders about the ways that their processes are changing and how their roles are changing. I don't think anyone has the perfect answer. I mean, there's answers that are more right for your business versus, the business that I'm in. And so you got to kind of figure that out for yourself. There's a lot of FOMO going around, like in plenty of podcasts. People say, yeah, I figured it out, like using AI on everything. And I've also just kind of seen a lot of bullshit where
So much bullshit.
it's not real, but it's very clear that it's part of the conversation, right? You and I both went to Config this past year, Figma's big conference, and almost all the talks referenced how you should be using AI, but I didn't see as many examples as I wanted to about how people are actually using AI. And I just found it kind of frustrating. I think next year we're going to see a lot more like realistic examples of how people are actually integrating it into their teams and into their workflows. The other thing I would say for the designers who are working on a product that is not as exciting, that isn't on the cutting edge of AI, the thing you can still play with is optimizing your own workflow, right? In the background, whether your team wants to or not, you can be tinkering with different tools and different tech stacks to see what you can optimize. Like I would love to see that. If your work in your portfolio is not that exciting, tell me an exciting story about the tools that you're playing with and how you're trying to optimize those things. That is awesome when I get to see that in a portfolio.
I'll give you a tangible example from something I just discussed with one of my team members. So this particular team member has always worked on B2C and mostly worked on fintech mobile apps. So that's what he's working on at Flexi with one of our fintech clients. And he came to me and he said, I really want to work on enterprise products. And again, very hard to get someone a role in a company on a large enterprise product that has never really worked on a large enterprise product before. It's like the chicken and the egg. Like, how do you get that experience? So I told him, okay, let's see how we can get you the most relevant experience based on what we have available to us. So I understood within the organization that the business solutions team needed some extra support, but they already had a designer. But what they didn't have was a design system for the business solutions that aligned with the B2C part of the business. So I told this designer, listen, you've built design systems before. This is your way to get your hands dirty and start working on these B2B products by working with that designer, by helping her build this design system, by aligning it horizontally across the organization. And I'm going to challenge you even further. We have been playing with this idea of integrating AI into design systems for some months. You and I talked about it at Config, and we've been trying to get a client to work on specifically with this. But, budgets don't normally close until Q4. And so we're still waiting on some things to come through. But since I'm so eager, I'm like, I want to do it now. So I told this designer, listen, we have this client. They trust us. We're already working on their design system. Let's sandbox it. Let's just do it with them. For them, as long as the design system gets built, they're happy. And meanwhile, we can start to experiment into doing different integrations into the design system so that we can ultimately show this use case of how we've been able to do this AI integration with the design system. The promised deliverable is the design system itself. Now you get to work on a B2B product, a more complex system. And if we're successful, we've also done an AI integration that the client hasn't even asked for. They won't expect it because we never promised it to them. But this is a great opportunity for us on our own to be able to have this sandbox with a real use case that we can actually show success. So there's always ways to spin things. And to your point, if you're a designer and you're working on a product that is boring, it happens sometimes. I get it. You don't always get to work on the sexiest product, but you can always find ways to spin what you're working on and make it more interesting. So there really isn't an excuse to not get the experience that you're looking for because there are always ways to get your foot in.
Yes, 100%. I think you're one of the best people I know at that, about the networking, the building connections, finding those doors, cranking them open. Uh, I think a really great way for designers who are in like the B2C space, who want to move more into the B2B space. There are plenty of companies that are looking for just a little touch of that B2C experience. When I worked at Lattice, we were a tool that was B2B, but it was for every employee. And so it becomes very general. And we really value designers that had a little bit of that B2C background that could give us a little bit of that craft boost and make things just a little bit prettier. And so I do think there are always ways to make steps the direction that you want to go. And same way going the other direction, right? You could move towards a B2B app that's a little more consumer facing to then make that leap over to consumer. I am always encouraging the product designers on my team to have external creative pursuits that kind of don't have anything directly related to their product design work. And so I really encourage the team to balance their time and to find the time to creatively recharge in other ways and new ways. I also tell them that I will approve any of their professional development budgets if they can tell me that it's going to improve their creativity. I could tell you how I do it, but it's not going to be the same for you. And it's a constant thing that you have to learn about. When I first kicked off doing some advising for another startup, when I was at Lattice, I talked to my boss, Jared, and I kind of told him what I was thinking about. And I, was a little bit nervous about how much time it could take. And I was really taken aback because he was like, do it. You're going to grow so much by doing that additional advising work, like looking at a really early stage team and helping them to kind of piece together their first design steps and building their team out, that you will apply to your work here at Lattice and you will just become more valuable to this business. So do it. And so that's the way that I would frame it. And I encouraged other designers to pursue those kinds of things. If you're going to do some advising work or possibly even some freelance work, do something that is going to grow you in some interesting way, some learnings that you're going to be able to bring back to that business. Now, if you're doing a whole other second job and your performance is starting to tank, that's obviously going to be a problem. That's not going to work out long term.
So the last point and topic that I want to touch upon is moving into management. We have talked about several times the craft and how the role of a manager has shifted in the last couple of years, where now managers are not just expected to manage, even in larger organizations or ones that are going through a lot of growth like Hightouch, but you slowly grew into this management position. And I remember when you and I talked even just a few years ago, you were like a team of 1.5 or like barely 2 people. So for those that want to eventually manage people, what would you say are the best steps that people can take in order to set the stage and prepare themselves for that type of role?
The first thing I would say is that there are no clear paths into management. So if you want to do it, you got to find those paths. You have to create those paths, which may mean changing jobs and not allowing people to promise you something down the road, because it's really hard to actually deliver on that. That, hey, a year from now, I promise I'll make you a manager. Just the business can change in so many different ways and shapes. It's really hard to do that. Now, I can know that there's certain members of my team that want to go that direction long term, and I can try to set them up with those experiences. And if the business gets there, great, let's do that. It's just not something that can be guaranteed. I think I learned that lesson at Lattice. That was something that was really important to me. And it just took a long time to get there because the business just wasn't ready for it. I think building experience, mentoring, and being a design lead are great places to start. Being a manager is a lot of emotional labor. I've got to ask the team to do hard things. That's the hard thing about being a manager, is asking other people to do hard things, right? And to continue to push them and to grow them and to give them the tough feedback, to have those hard conversations. That's the biggest challenge with being a manager. And I think you can get a taste of that through doing mentoring. Can you give people the hard feedback and see them make some improvement? So you can get that from going to the various mentoring platforms. If your company doesn't have enough designers, it's a good place to spend some time on. You can also get that internally by just talking with other designers, and also sometimes other engineers or PMs that want to learn a little bit more about design. And you can kind of mentor them in some of the skills, some of the tools. You can teach them things, giving your teammates feedback that aren't designers, right? Helping them to grow. I think it's looking for all of those opportunities and then setting yourself up for a role that you can get that experience in.
So as we wrap up here, something I ask all of the guests are, what is one of the most exciting things within the industry that's happening today?
I think that the opportunity to build applications as a designer who has limited technical experience, but being able to build an application just through vibe coding and to create personalized software is really exciting to me. And I think all those things are going to continue to improve, obviously, become more and more approachable for the everyday person. But we as designers have something that nobody else has, right? We have that taste, we have that opinion about how things should work, around what good experiences feel like. And we are able to coach that AI partner way better than other folks are. And so I'm really excited about where this can take us. I think that we will eventually see, the first billion-dollar SaaS company that is entirely built by a designer who only knows how to code a little bit. We are going to start seeing those kinds of really awesome scenarios. So I'm very excited for that.
Elliot, thank you so much for being here.
This is great, Ali.
We'll see you next time.